Seniors, fix your sleep and bladder issues with these smart fruit swaps. That's right. That's the title. And if you're over 60 and waking up 2, 3, even 5 times a night to pee, you may want to listen very closely. But wait a second. Can fruit really be the reason you're not sleeping through the night? Some of you might be nodding already, saying, yep, I stopped eating watermelon late and I sleep like a baby now. Others might be thinking, come on, fruit is healthy. How could a pear or a grape mess with my bladder? Well, here's the truth. It's not just about what fruit you eat, but when, how, and how much. And believe it or not, certain fruits that seem harmless, or even healthy, could be sabotaging your sleep and overstimulating your bladder without you realizing it. But before we jump into the juicy details, literally, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who keeps waking up at night, and hit that subscribe button. That simple click helps us keep making content that empowers seniors like you to live healthier, more peaceful lives, without medications, just smarter choices. All right, let's get started. Why nighttime urination happens in older adults. As we age, our kidneys begin to slow down, not in a dangerous way, but in a very noticeable one. When you're young, your kidneys naturally produce less urine at night. It's how your body helps you sleep through until morning. But after the age of 60, this rhythm becomes less efficient. Even if you stop drinking fluids in the evening, your kidneys may still produce a surprising amount of urine while you sleep. This condition is known as nocturnal polyuria, and it's responsible for nearly 80% of nighttime urination issues in older adults. So, if you've ever wondered why you're waking up so often despite barely sipping water after dinner, the answer may lie in your kidneys, not your water glass. On top of that, your bladder itself changes with age. In your younger years, your bladder could hold 400 to 500 milliliters of urine before your brain got the time to go signal. But later in life, even 100 to 150 milliliters, just half a glass, can make you feel like you urgently need to go. This happens because the bladder walls lose elasticity and become stiffer. The nerves surrounding the bladder also become more reactive, and for women, the drop in estrogen after menopause weakens bladder tone. In men, the prostate tends to enlarge with age, pushing against the bladder and reducing how much it can comfortably hold. All of this means your bladder is quicker to sound the alarm, even if it's not anywhere close to full. A perfect example is one of my patients, Mr. Rajan, a 68-year-old retired engineer. He kept waking up every 2 hours to use the bathroom. When we checked, we found his bladder was sending false alarms when it held only a small amount of urine. Then there's the food you eat, particularly in the evening. What you put on your plate in the last few hours before bedtime has a direct impact on your bladder, especially if it alters your urine's pH. Fruits that are high in citric acid, oxalic acid, or fermentable sugars can make your urine more acidic. In younger folks, this doesn't usually cause any problems. But in older adults with more sensitive bladders, that acid can irritate the bladder lining, triggering spasms, inflammation, and those frustrating false urges to urinate. Even something as simple as a glass of orange juice can become a nightly disruptor. It might feel healthy, but for your bladder, it could be like pouring lemon juice on a paper cut. Here, as another layer, your hormones. Specifically the antidiuretic hormone, ADH, also known as vasopressin. This hormone tells your kidneys to slow down urine production while you sleep. But after 60, your body produces less ADH at night. That means your kidneys don't get the signal to hold back water, so they just keep producing urine as if it's daytime. Even if you've done everything right, like avoiding water before bed, your body may still flood your bladder simply because it didn't get the hormonal memo to slow down. And finally, there's sleep itself. As we grow older, our sleep becomes lighter. We spend less time in deep sleep and more time in light stages. That means it's easier to wake up and harder to fall back asleep. So when you combine that light sleep with a bladder that feels full when it's really not, and kidneys that are pumping out more urine than they should, it's no wonder your nights are interrupted again and again. You might get up not because you truly need to, but because your bladder is more sensitive, your brain is more alert, and your hormones aren't helping you out the way they used to. From a medical standpoint, this isn't just frustrating, it's completely understandable. The systems that once worked in harmony are now less coordinated. You're producing more urine, your bladder is reacting too soon, your sleep is easily broken, and even your favorite fruits might be making things worse. But here's the good news. While we can't turn back the clock on aging, we can change how we respond to it. As a doctor who's spent decades working with seniors, I've seen remarkable improvements in patients simply by adjusting their evening eating habits, especially their fruit choices. By avoiding acidic or watery fruits at night, and choosing calming ones like bananas or papayas earlier in the evening, many of my patients have cut their nighttime urination in half, or even eliminated it entirely. So no, you may not be able to control your bladder the same way you did at 30, but you absolutely can work with your body, not against it. And that begins with awareness, small dietary shifts, and better timing. Now take a moment to reflect. What fruit did you eat last night? When did you eat it? And how many times did you get up? Try changing just one of those things tonight and see how your bladder thanks you tomorrow. The 8 best fruits to eat for better sleep and bladder comfort. Number 1. Banana, the bladder calming classic. Bananas are one of the best fruits for seniors dealing with nighttime urination. They're low in acid, easy to digest, and packed with potassium, which helps relax the bladder's smooth muscles and reduce those sudden urges that wake you up. Bananas also contain magnesium, which supports the nerves and keeps bladder spasms in check. I've had patients who tried everything, cutting fluids, taking sleep aids, but what helped most was switching their evening fruit. One of them, a 72-year-old woman named Mrs. Joshi, stopped drinking orange juice at night and started eating a banana around 5:30 p.m. Within a few days, she was waking only once or not at all. For best results, eat bananas at room temperature, never cold, and avoid pairing them with milk. A study in neurobiology of sleep confirms that potassium and magnesium can improve sleep and reduce muscle activity, including in the bladder. If you're waking up often, this simple change might be exactly what your body needs. Number 2, pear, nature's gentle cleanser. Pears are a simple, effective fruit for supporting both digestion and bladder comfort in older adults. They're naturally low in acid and soft on the system, making them easy to tolerate. What makes them especially helpful is their fiber and sorbitol content, which promotes smooth bowel movements and reduce bloating. When your gut is backed up, the pressure can push against your bladder, triggering unnecessary urgency. I've seen this in patients many times. One of them, Mr. Sharma, 68, used to wake twice each night. After adding a pear to his afternoon routine around 4 p.m., his digestion improved and his nighttime bathroom trips dropped noticeably. I always recommend eating pears with the skin on, just wash them well, and avoid eating them too close to bedtime. A study from the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition even showed that increasing fruit fiber improved both bowel and bladder symptoms in seniors. If you deal with nighttime urgency, ask yourself, is your gut part of the problem? A single pear a day might be your quiet solution. Number 3, muskmelon cantaloupe, the alkaline hero. Muskmelon or cantaloupe is a great fruit for older adults struggling with bladder irritation. It's high in water and vitamin A but low in acidity, making it one of the most bladder-friendly fruits out there. Its natural alkalizing effect helps soothe the urinary tract, especially in people prone to inflammation or discomfort after eating more acidic foods. I often recommend it to patients in warmer climates or during summer months when dehydration and irritation become more common. One of my patients, a 70-year-old woman dealing with frequent urgency, started eating a small bowl of muskmelon around 11 a.m. daily. Within a week, she noticed less pressure and fewer nighttime interruptions. The key is to eat it alone, not mixed with other fruits or dairy, and always before 5 p.m. A review published in the Journal of Functional Foods supports its anti-inflammatory benefits, especially for the bladder lining. If you're someone who enjoys muskmelon later in the evening, try moving it to earlier in the day and pay attention to the difference in your sleep. Does it help you wake up less? I'd love to hear your experience. Sometimes the timing of a fruit is just as important as the fruit itself. Number 4, dragon fruit, the exotic gentle choice. Dragon fruit is a great choice for people with sensitive digestion and bladder issues. It's low in acidity, high in fiber, and rich in antioxidants that help reduce inflammation without upsetting the gut. Unlike citrus fruits, it doesn't cause fermentation, which can lead to bloating and pressure on the bladder. I often recommend eating it in the late afternoon, around 4 or 5 p.m., and always on its own, not mixed with milk or yogurt, which can slow digestion in older adults. One of my patients, a 67-year-old man who frequently woke up at night to urinate, replaced his usual fruit with dragon fruit in the afternoon. After just a few days, he noticed less bloating and fewer nighttime interruptions. Research from Frontiers in Nutrition has shown that dragon fruit supports gut health and reduces inflammation, which may help calm the bladder. If you've ever felt gassy or heavy after fruit, try switching to dragon fruit for a few days and see how your body responds. It's a simple change that can make a real difference. Number 5, apple peeled, the prebiotic soother. Peeled apples are a simple but effective choice for seniors dealing with nighttime urgency. They contain pectin, a soluble fiber that supports gut health by feeding good bacteria and promoting smoother digestion. For people with acid reflux or sensitive stomachs, removing the skin makes the apple easier to tolerate. When digestion is calm, there's less bloating and pressure on the bladder, which can reduce those false nighttime urges. I recommend eating a peeled apple around mid-afternoon, 2 to 3 hours before dinner. One of my patients, a 66-year-old woman, began doing this daily and noticed fewer trips to the bathroom at night within a week. Research published in Nutrients confirms that apple pectin improves bowel regularity and gut balance, both of which play a role in bladder comfort. If you're waking often but feel your bladder isn't really full, it may be your digestion. Try a peeled apple instead of your usual snack and see how your body responds. Number 6, steamed papaya, digestive companion. Papaya is one of the best fruits to calm digestion and reduce nighttime bladder urgency. Thanks to papain, a natural enzyme that breaks down protein, it helps the stomach process food more efficiently after dinner. For seniors, slow digestion often leads to bloating and pressure on the bladder, even when it's not full. Papaya also has mild alkaline properties that soothe the gut and reduce inflammation. I usually recommend eating a small slice of soft, ripe papaya about 30 to 60 minutes after dinner, not right away and never cold from the fridge. One of my patients, Mr. Itter, age 70, used to eat mango pickle after dinner and woke up several times at night. After switching to papaya, his bladder urgency dropped noticeably within a week. Research in clinical nutrition confirms that papain supports digestion and reduces bloating, two things that can help lighten pressure on the bladder. If you often feel full or tight before bed, try papaya instead of spicy or acidic foods and see how your sleep improves. Number 7, stewed blueberries, anti-inflammatory champions. Stewed blueberries are a soothing option for those with sensitive bladders, especially at night. They're rich in anthocyanins, powerful anti-inflammatory compounds that support nerve health and reduce oxidative stress. When gently cooked with warm water, cinnamon, and a pinch of salt, blueberries become easier to digest and less likely to irritate the bladder. I recommend eating them about 2 hours before bed. One of my patients, a 69-year-old woman, replaced her usual dessert with a small bowl of stewed blueberries and noticed fewer nighttime urges within a few days. A study in Advances in Nutrition found that anthocyanins can help reduce inflammation in the nervous system, which may ease bladder overactivity. If raw berries leave you feeling unsettled or bloated, try them stewed instead and see how your sleep responds. Number 8, ripe guava, not overripe. Vitamin C without the acid. Ripe guava is a great option for older adults who want the benefits of vitamin C without the acidity of citrus fruits. It supports the immune system and urinary tract while being much gentler on the bladder. When firm and properly ripened, guava helps calm inflammation in the bladder lining and reduces irritation that can trigger nighttime urgency. I recommend eating it around 4 to 5 p.m. on its own, and never with milk, as that can slow digestion. One of my patients swapped out her evening sweet lime juice for guava and noticed better sleep and less bladder discomfort within a week. A study in Food and Function confirms that guava offers anti-inflammatory benefits, especially for the urinary system. If citrus leaves you feeling unsettled, try ripe guava instead and see how your body responds. Sometimes a simple switch is all it takes. The 8 fruits you should avoid after sunset. Now that we've covered the 8 best fruits to support better sleep and bladder comfort, let's turn to the flip side. The 8 fruits you should avoid after sunset if you want to sleep through the night without interruption. Number 1, oranges, the acidic alarm clock. Oranges may be great in the morning, but they're one of the worst fruits to eat at night if you struggle with bladder sensitivity. Their high citric acid content lowers urine pH and irritates the bladder lining, especially in older adults. Even a half-full bladder can feel urgent after eating acidic fruits. One of my patients, Mr. Vijay, drank orange juice every night around 8 p.m. and had no idea it was disrupting his sleep. When he moved it to the early afternoon, his nighttime waking dropped significantly. Research in urology annals confirms that lower urine pH increases urgency, particularly in seniors. If you enjoy oranges, just keep them before 2 p.m. and avoid them in the evening. Sometimes it's not the fruit, it's the timing that matters most. Number 2, pineapple, the overactive enzyme trap. Pineapple contains bromelain, an enzyme that speeds up digestion but can overstimulate the gut, especially in older adults. This extraintestinal activity often leads to bloating and pressure on the bladder, which can trigger nighttime urgency. Its slight acidity, especially when unripe, adds to the irritation. I had a patient who ate pineapple with yogurt after dinner, thinking it was healthy, but she kept waking up twice a night. When she switched to ripe papaya earlier in the evening, her symptoms improved within days. If you like pineapple, have it around midday and avoid mixing it with dairy or other fruits. Studies show bromelain increases bowel movement, which isn't ideal before bed. Have you ever noticed your stomach feels busy after pineapple? Or you feel the urge to pee at night but it's not really there? If so, try adjusting the timing or switching fruits. You might sleep better. Number 3, grapes, the fermentation culprit. Grapes are high in natural sugars that tend to ferment in the gut, especially when eaten in the evening as digestion slows. This fermentation leads to gas, bloating, and abdominal pressure that can push against the bladder, causing false urgency. One of my patients, Mr. Khan from Lucknow, used to snack on black grapes with evening tea but struggled with disrupted sleep and multiple nighttime bathroom trips. After switching to a pear in the afternoon, his symptoms eased quickly. Studies in nutrients show that fermentable sugars like fructose can increase intestinal pressure, which may contribute to nighttime urination. If you enjoy grapes, have them peeled and at room temperature in the morning, not after 6 p.m. Have you ever noticed bloating or restlessness after a grape-heavy snack? Try adjusting the timing and see how your bladder reacts. Number 4, kiwi vitamin C with a hidden sting. Kiwi is rich in vitamin C and fiber, but its high citric acid content can irritate the bladder, especially in older adults. When eaten cold and raw in the evening, it often worsens digestive sensitivity and triggers nighttime urgency. I had a patient who ate kiwi after dinner to boost immunity, but kept waking up with bladder discomfort. Switching it to a morning fruit bowl helped resolve the issue. Research in clinical gerontology shows that acidic fruits, especially when chilled, can heighten bladder nerve sensitivity in seniors. If you enjoy kiwi, have it before noon and avoid combining it with dairy or cold smoothies later in the day. Have you noticed a difference in how your body reacts to kiwi based on timing? You're not imagining it, when you eat it matters. Number 5, raw tomatoes, the oxalic acid offender. Raw tomatoes are high in oxalates, which can contribute to crystal formation in urine and irritate the bladder lining, especially in older adults. They're often eaten with salt or onions, which increase gastric acidity and can make nighttime bladder symptoms worse. I had a couple from Ahmedabad who swapped their evening tomato-onion salad for steamed carrots, and within days, their sleep quality improved significantly. Studies in the Journal of Urology link oxalate-rich foods like raw tomatoes to increased urinary discomfort in seniors. Cooking tomatoes in soups or stews reduces acidity and makes them bladder-friendly. If you've ever felt more urgency after a tomato salad at night, consider cooking them instead. You may sleep better. Number 6, ripe mango, the sugar bomb. Ripe mango is sweet and comforting, but its high fructose content can lead to blood sugar spikes and digestive fermentation, especially when eaten in the evening. For seniors, this often means gas, bloating, and internal heat that puts pressure on the bladder and disrupts sleep. I had a patient who ate mango after dinner and woke up twice a night feeling full and restless. When she moved her mango to breakfast, her sleep improved within a week. Studies in nutrition and metabolism show that fructose ferments more easily when gut motility slows down, making mango a poor nighttime choice. If you enjoy it, have it before noon and avoid pairing it with dairy or heavy meals. Have you ever felt extra bloated or warm after a late-night mango snack? Shifting it earlier might make all the difference. Number 7, mixed citrus juices, orange plus lemon plus kiwi. Mixed citrus juices might taste light and refreshing, but for seniors, they pack a punch your bladder can't ignore. Combining acidic fruits like orange, lemon, and kiwi lowers urine pH and overstimulates bladder nerves. Juice absorbs faster than whole fruit, and when chilled, slows digestion, especially in older adults, causing bloating and nighttime urgency. One of my patients used to drink a citrus blend before bed, thinking it helped immunity, but it kept him waking up all night. After switching to warm pear in the afternoon, his sleep improved within days. Research shows acidic, cold juices increase bladder irritation in people over 65. If you enjoy citrus, stick to one fruit at a time, drink it at room temperature, and only in the morning. Have you noticed your bladder acts up after evening juice? Try changing the time and temperature. It can make a big difference. Number 8, watermelon at night. The hidden floodgate. Watermelon is over 90% water, making it incredibly hydrating, but eating it at night can lead to frequent urination. Its high water content stimulates the kidneys and bladder just when your body needs rest. It also cools the body, which can disrupt sleep in seniors with already sensitive nighttime temperature regulation. I had a patient who loved eating cold watermelon after dinner, but once she switched to eating it mid-morning, her nighttime bathroom trips dropped from 3 to 1. Research confirms that high-water fruits in the evening increase nocturnal urine output in older adults. If you love watermelon, enjoy it before 2 p.m. on its own, not with dairy or other fruits. Have you noticed your sleep suffers after a watermelon dessert? Timing really matters. When and how to eat fruit after age 60 for bladder-safe sleep. After 60, the timing of your fruit matters just as much as the type. Your digestive system and kidneys are most active in the morning, which means fruits high in water or acid, like watermelon, orange, or pineapple, should be eaten before 2 p.m. Gentler fruits like banana, papaya, or pear can go a bit later, but never after 7 p.m. One patient of mine used to eat watermelon at 8 p.m. and couldn't figure out why she was up every 2 hours. A simple shift to mid-morning fixed that in 3 days. Avoid mixing fruit with heavy meals. Fruit digests faster than rice or curry, and combining them slows digestion, leading to fermentation, gas, and pressure on the bladder. It's better to have fruit as a snack a couple of hours after lunch than with dinner. Also, no fruit or any food should be eaten within 2 hours of bedtime. Your body needs a chance to wind down. Try this 3-day experiment. Eat one bladder-friendly fruit like banana at 5 p.m. Avoid acidic or watery fruits after 2 p.m. and track how many times you wake up at night. Many of my patients notice better sleep almost immediately. Have you tried adjusting when, not just what, you eat? Sometimes the fix isn't new medicine, it's better timing. So let's bring it all together. We've explored 8 bladder-friendly fruits that can help you sleep through the night, like bananas, pears, and stewed blueberries. We've also uncovered 8 fruits to avoid after sunset, like oranges, pineapple, and watermelon, that might be sabotaging your bladder without you even knowing it. And we didn't stop there. You now know exactly when to eat, how to combine, and even how to test which fruits your body tolerates best. Remember, after age 60, it's not just about eating healthy, it's about eating smart. Your bladder, your kidneys, your sleep cycle, they've all changed. But the good news, you can change with them, small tweaks, big results. And sometimes the biggest difference starts with a simple fruit swap. Thanks so much for spending time with us today. Whether you're here for yourself, your parents, or someone you care about, this kind of knowledge can change lives. If you found value in this video, we'd love it if you'd give it a thumbs up, share it with your senior friends or family, and subscribe to our channel for more evidence-based health tips tailored to you. New videos every week, new insights every time, because your health doesn't retire. Hit that subscribe button, tap the notification bell, and stay informed, empowered, and energized. Until next time, sleep well, stay hydrated at the right time, and keep making choices that honor your health. Thanks for watching.